And we're going to be giving you a lot of information. So we encourage you to keep the chat really active throughout if there's anything that's coming up as we take a look at some of this data. So before we even jump into what a Grow Your Own program is, let's take some time to consider why we need a homegrown teacher pipeline in DC. So in this chart, you can see a ward by ward comparison of teacher racial and ethnic demographics compared to student racial and ethnic demographics. And I've noted in the red boxes the wards where we see the biggest disparities between Black teachers and Black students and Latinx teachers and Latinx students. So you might look at some of these and say, well, the percentages are not that different, or, they're kind of better than other, districts around the country. But it's important to note that these are just averages, and averages mask a lot of what's happening at schools. So for example, I used to work at a school with a 68% Hispanic population where nearly half of the students were English language learners. But I was, in my first 2 years, I was one of 2 Latinx teachers, and the other Latinx teachers was not like a homeroom lead teacher. She was a Spanish teacher. And in total, we had 4 Latinx staff members. So just imagine how, like, the huge disparities that were at the school, and also just keep in mind like the language barriers that were present. So why does this matter? We already know from research that students of color, they do better when they're taught by teachers that represent them, both racially and culturally. And we also know that diverse schools are more likely to retain diverse teachers. So as we talk today about recruitment, it's also really important to think about the other side to that, which is retention.
Once again, just realized I was on mute. Thank you, Isa. So now we're going to look at the career and technical education programs that are currently offered here in DC. And so when we look at this slide, we're looking at essentially a lot of the academies that are currently being offered and presented to our high school students. And there's a lot of great opportunity here. We see, however, that early childhood education is only offered in 3 schools. So the question comes to mind, what happens to other students who are interested in education, and those students who do not particularly go to these 3 schools, or what also happens to high school students who are interested in education, but not necessarily interested in early childhood. So it takes a really special person to teach early childhood. I was a middle and high school teacher, and although I love the little ones, I have one of my own, I cannot imagine teaching them. So I'm sure there are some high school students who feel the same way. They're interested in education and becoming an educator, but they do not have the opportunity to learn about education in a more general sense, or they don't attend one of these 3 schools, one of these 3 specific schools. So we have small pockets of the work currently happening throughout the city. But we currently do not have a citywide initiative that gives all high school students the opportunity to be exposed to education as a field of interest. Okay, so now we're going to move in and look more at the Grow Your Own programs or models that are occurring nationally.
Yeah, so at the beginning, some of you said you didn't really know that much about what a Grow Your Own program is or can look like. And the truth is that they're really diverse, but we have some really promising models in other states that we can kind of borrow from when we think about what a DC program could look like. So California is a state that's kind of a veteran at this. They actually started a while ago, like in the 90s, and their program has evolved with time. So as you can see, they've provided support to paraprofessionals by giving them scholarship and the funds needed to become certified teachers. So this is what we would call a Grow Your Own pipeline that targets paraprofessionals who are already working in their communities, but who faced a lot of financial barriers in order to become teachers. And so this basically just removes that barrier by giving them the funds, but also the mentorship and support by someone who can help them through the licensure exams, for example, in order to become licensed teachers. And they also met paraprofessionals where they were. So many paraprofessionals already come with bachelor's degrees. And so all they need is help and the funding in order to take that praxis exam, for example, to become a licensed teacher or complete additional coursework. And then other paraprofessionals might have an associate's degree and a CDA degree so that they can, work with as paraprofessionals, but they need to obtain their bachelor's degree in order to become licensed teachers. And so this is an example of a grow your own program that targets paraprofessionals. But Giselle's going to talk about one that targets high school students.
Yeah, and Minnesota did a really amazing thing. In 2017, they passed the Increased Teachers of Color Act, which provided approximately $1.9 million in grants to expand two types of grow your own efforts. So one of the efforts is focused on dual enrollment for high school students interested in the teaching profession. So the program is being used to not only expose high school students to the profession of teaching, but to also give them an opportunity to earn college credits while in high school, and also remove some of the barriers to entering the profession. Yeah, the state has been very intentional about their efforts to diversify the teacher workforce throughout the state, with a specific push to recruit American Indian candidates as well as other candidates of color. So the demographics of Minnesota has changed pretty drastically over the past few years. We're seeing a increase of students of color, and so recognizing that was one of the motivators for proposing and then passing this act. So now we're going to move on to look at pockets of grow your own programs that are already happening in DC. We've learned a lot about these through our conversations with American University and Howard University. And we see these two schools as potential partners that we can work with to scale these programs to a district-wide level.
Sorry, now I was on mute, but I was going to say, if you have any questions as we go through these slides, feel free to just flag us down or unmute yourself. It's one of the benefits of having a small group. So we recently met with American University because we learned about their partnership with Ballou High School. And with them, they're basically providing dual enrollment courses. So we were just very curious. And what we learned was that they have a very robust and kind of well-established program that they're looking to kind of scale up with time. So their stated goal is to increase the diversity of the teacher pipeline and increase high school student exposure to education careers, and also increase their college readiness. Their program is called the Teacher Pipeline Project, and they start by enrolling high school students in dual enrollment courses. And they've partnered and have memorandums of understanding with DCPS, I think Friendship Public Charter Schools, as well as OSSI to kind of manage the student applications and give student support in these courses. So then that's kind of like the first step. And then the other side of that is that students are encouraged to apply for one of 3 fully funded positions as AU teaching fellows. So they don't necessarily have to have done the dual enrollment courses in order to be eligible. Anyone in the district any student in a public school in the district is eligible. But basically they basically give them a full ride to AU as undergraduates. And they receive a lot of mentorship from faculty in the School of Education. So one interesting thing that we learned from AU is that they were really intentional about the faculty that they picked at the school that would provide really awesome guidance to those students who were the teaching fellows. And then when they graduate, they'll work with their LEA partners, whether that be DCPS or maybe like Friendship Charter Schools, to ensure that they get jobs back at these schools. So it kind of takes it for full circle. And it's important to note that their fellows are in their first year at AU. So they're just completing their first year as college students at AU. So the program is still really young, but what we learned from them is how much collaboration is necessary between all of these institutions, between OSSI, DCPS, the charter LEAs, and of course the partner universities, and how small they are right now, but how amazing it would be if they were bigger. So like I said, AU was able to offer 3 scholarships to teaching fellows, but if we want like a really robust pipeline, we're just going to need more of this happening across the district. So we definitely want to get more funding to be able to support more fellows at partner universities.
I have a quick question just about dual enrollments. That means that they're getting college credit at the same time as high school credit. Is that right? Or am I,
Exactly. So they're basically, they apply to be in the dual enrollment program, then they actually go to like AU, for example, and take classes alongside college freshmen, and then they can take those credits to them when they apply to the university.
It's really valuable for students to get into that. I also had a question about whether AU, since it's so small right now, do we know if they're like collecting how the fellows are feeling about the program? Like, I would love to hear whether the mentorship, worked as intended or not.
Yeah, so we've definitely asked them that question, and that's something that they plan to do, just like have like an end of year, how did it go type of thing. But they say that the fellows are like extremely happy to be there, and it just seems like they're excited to become teachers, and that's one of the goals that they stated. They want, even if at the end of these 4 years they decide that maybe teaching is not for them, they want to expose education as a career. So maybe they'll go into another area of education that's just as valuable. And yeah, so in order to become the college level teaching fellow, they have to apply to AU, but there's like an additional essay in the Common App that they'll fill out. Great, thanks for the questions. So now we'll talk about Howard University.
Yeah, so we also met with Howard, and they are currently in the process of establishing a teacher certification program for elementary and secondary education. They will partner with local community colleges, more specifically Montgomery College and PG Community College. And through these partnerships, young adults who have some college credits are able to transfer to Howard School of Ed to complete their degree in education. So this current program loosely mirrors what the paraprofessional track of a district-wide grow your own program can look like here in DC. This track will allow paras to transfer their credits to a 4-year local university in order to complete their bachelor's and then also receive teacher certification.
So we're just getting started with these conversations, and we know that there are many other, DC's awesome because there's just so many higher education institutions who we could partner with. So while we've had conversations with AU and Howard, we're still reaching out to other university partners like Trinity and UDC. We're also meeting with OSSI and DCPS this upcoming week, and we're going to reach out to charter LEAs so that this can truly be like a district-wide teacher pipeline and not just a DCPS focused one. And the reason we need all these partnerships is just because it's going to require a significant level of collaboration with all of these groups in order to have a sustainable pipeline that we can scale up. So now we're going to kind of show you our proposal for what we would advocate for a DC Grow Your Own program to look like.
So for the paraprofessional track, we are envisioning we envision it actually to look very similar to what will be offered at Howard. So supporting paraprofessionals interested in earning a bachelor's to become a fully licensed teacher, giving them the opportunity to transfer those college credits over to a bachelor's education program, and also have the opportunity to earn college credit for their previous work experience. Also continuing the partnership or with local universities. And I think that's it.
And then for kind of the other track, it would be targeting the high school students, similar to the way that American University is doing right now, but at a much larger scale. So similar to AU, we want to uplift teaching as a profession and expose more high school students to teaching as like a fulfilling and also like a career choice where they can have financial stability. So we would encourage the partnering of higher institutions with OSSE, DCPS, and charter LEAs, so that, you know, if a student, it doesn't matter where the student is going to high school in DC. It's not like a school-based teacher academy where, you know, you have to be based at Ballou in order to have the opportunity to take these courses at American University. Well, really, it's something that you can just apply to as a high school student, no matter where you are, and then you'd go to school at these partner institutions. And sorry, Giselle, did you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I thought I heard you say. And so a really important piece of that will be important to making both of these tracks work is having a really robust cohort model where there's support for the paraprofessionals and for the high school students throughout, because we know that a lot of high school students, for example, you know, they might get into college and then they might not end college in 4 years, or they might not, or they might drop out halfway through because they didn't have the support necessary. So we definitely want to have really strong faculty at the university who are specifically picked out so that they can be partners with them, and also just having mentors in the city. So maybe in the first couple of years, there are teachers at various schools that just kind of like sign up to be a mentor to some of these high school students. Maybe they're teachers at the schools where these students have applied to, because we know that mentorship is a really important piece. And we've also heard from so many stakeholders that if there isn't an office in order to manage this work, then the whole program is going to fall apart. So there needs to be an office that's in charge of making sure that all of these different institutions are collaborating with each other, and with at least a few full-time positions, an executive director, a paraprofessional program director, a dual enrollment program director, who are there to make sure that the program, you know, functions accordingly. And then finally, both programs would need just really strong data tracking so that we can just, you know, see where there are gaps, that where things aren't working and kind of troubleshoot, but also show where things are working and show that this is actually increasing the diversity of our teacher workforce.
That office would be in OSSE?
That's a great question. I think OSSE would make the most sense since they're the, you know, kind of the overseer of the LEAs, but yeah. Thank you everyone for engaging in that. I was just reading through your reflections, and there I can tell we're gonna have a great conversation already. So we can come back together. You can, if it helps, we can, what I do is I kind of make my screen smaller so I can have them both side by side. That way I can refer back to the slides while seeing each other in gallery view. So we see lots of things that everyone's finding appealing, like multiple avenues to becoming teachers. There's excitement about the paraprofessional track and also exposing high school students. So thank you for all of these reflections. I kind of think maybe we should start with the things that you would like to see in a Grow Your Own program. I saw some interesting reflections about making sure that they're equitable in all wards. Would anyone like to start us off?
Yeah, I can get us started. I really loved like Liz's idea too of just this idea of putting billboards on buses, and I think just kind of making sure that these types of programs are visible, you know, and I think that right now, even just judging by where they're starting, I think just in like 3 high schools, you know, part of expanding people thinking about viewing teaching favorably or thinking that they can like want to become a teacher is like seeing it, you know, and having it. And I think that will kind of start a lot of just like informal, natural conversations, you know. I mean, so many of my students ride the bus every day. So it puts it kind of in a place where, you know, it's in the community and it kind of allows for it to kind of grow naturally. So I could see that kind of being a cool sell as like a PSA.
Thank you for that, Ben. And as you were talking, I was thinking through our research, I saw that ACT, their research and policy brief that they released in 2018 showed that out of like 19 popular majors, education has dropped down, and it used to be number 4. And then in like 2007, and then in 2012, it like dropped down to number 8. And it's just been that steady pace. But one of the major reasons for this drop or loss of interest in education is the salary. And the wonderful thing about us being in DC is that the starting salary is amazing comparatively, right, nationally. So just thinking about going to like Liz's idea of billboards, this can be something that can really be advertised and really like shift the thinking in students, just making them aware that no, like the teaching profession here in DC is a lucrative career. Like it pays off in many ways, but like actually getting paid well is one of the ways that it pays off. So.
That's a good point, that high school students might not realize that. They might hear national conversations about how little teachers are paid and not know that it's an actually livable profession here. Although I did see a comment in the slide that made me feel sad. I can't remember whose slide I saw it on, about how schools can be such unwelcoming places to work, which, you know, I've experienced as a teacher, but just kind of making sure that that support continues. Because a comment I put in my slide is, I hope, you know, you don't get a lot of interest in this and then just still have teachers leave the profession. You know, our teacher retention rates also come into this conversation.
Yeah, one of the things that we had talked about was we made like a very rudimentary budget because there's just so many unknowns right now. But as we tried to kind of map out like an initial, like just go at a budget, we allocated funds for these teacher mentors so that hopefully every single teacher, whether they're paraprofessionals who are now becoming teachers or, you know, first year teachers in a classroom, that they receive support wherever they end up working, and that it's continuous. We don't just like make them teachers and then leave, because we know that that's like by the 5th year, many teachers of colors are leaving the teaching workforce.
I was the person that put that comment about, I was having a discussion with a friend yesterday who has started a school, and she only want to hire brand new people, right? And I was explaining to her that in a school, you need the person that's doing the mothering. And I hate to use that word mothering, but you all know what I'm talking about. So if everybody is new, who's the anchor? Who's the person? So I'm thinking when we get people into these programs, they need to go into schools, if they possibly can, where there's mothering. And I can't think of a better word. Because as a Black woman, I don't want to be seen as the mother. I'm not comforting everybody, but you guys know what I'm saying. And so I'm just concerned about, you know, we don't empower teachers to go into these schools and feel powerful, make their voices heard. They're probably going to leave. You know, they're in schools where they're not feel, oh, I got to do what the administration say. You don't. You know, they gave me this curriculum. How do I fight it? How do I go against it? So it's like the younger generation, even older people, how are we going to fight it? Even like now. So to me, that's just my whole goal, to try to show people through the work that I do that you don't have to take it. There are ways around these systems, but it's a shame they have to go around the system. If you don't teach people to feel empowered, they're more than likely going to get burnt out and leave. So I'm thinking once they go through these programs, what are we going to do once they get into school? And hopefully part of the programs is to talk about empowerment and ways to disrupt these systems that we know aren't working.
So we heard that with AU, they their courses are really around like social justice and equity. And I think that's an important piece to this, that when, you know, teachers are taking the coursework necessary to become teachers, that we're really pushing them to be teachers that are going to end up being happy, but also are going to help disrupt and improve the system. So that's definitely one of the suggestions that we'll make. But thank you for bringing that up, because yeah, we can't talk about recruitment without retention.
The plug for a later session. No.
Yep, then we'll be leading a teacher retention session later that will focus on the other side of this. Other reflections, feel free to just unmute, and either respond to something on someone's slide or just bring up something that you noted.
So I also wanted to comment on the thing I love too about the Howard program, I think is, and I teach 12th grade. So like a lot of students will start at UDC or they'll start at Montgomery College or like and acquire a lot of credits, is like really making sure that there's clear ways for credits to transfer, because nobody wants to like do something for a couple of years and then feel like they don't get anything from it. And, you know, really have that kind of pipeline and the clarity there being efficient and like managed and useful. So I think that like so many high schoolers too like don't know exactly what they want to do, but if they know that they're working towards something and there's a goal, and it can lead to a good paycheck and it can lead to skills, like they'll stay with it. And so I think so many kids, like even just people who I used to teach will go into something for 2 years and then they'll go a completely different path because they don't want to do it. But if I think they're building credits towards something that's like a practical job, and something that they care about, like that is really awesome, because then you can allow kids to mature and gain training in something that can be really useful.
Yeah, and I think the mentorship will be really important, like helping kids see that connection. Like if they see happy teachers mentoring them and showing them just how valuable it is, then I think that's only going to help. But something that we've come across, like an issue that we've come across that I saw as a barrier on somebody's slide, and Giselle can help me talk about this too, is just, well, what happens if high school students don't come back as teachers? So something interesting that we learned from AU is that they fund their scholarships, and that's why there's so few of them. But that means that they're not tied to like, you know, completion. Like nobody is holding the kids accountable to becoming teachers in the district. But what we learned from national models is if they want to be funded by, you know, states or local school districts, then if they're like city money, generally people want to see a return on the investment. And so then they do kind of have to tie that. And it's much harder to do with high school students. So I think, I don't know where we've landed on that, Giselle, but one thing I think we're thinking about is like, it's still valuable to expose kids to education as a career. And it's still valuable to help them in like college completion and college preparedness, even if it means that they're not going to come back. It would be really difficult to then tell a 12th grader who wants to be like an engineer that they have to go teach in a DC school. But we know that there's kind of like competing interests there.
Mhm. I had a thought, but then I lost it. Sorry.
In the main session, oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Jacqueline.
was thinking in the main session, it was so confusing to me. I don't teach in DC, but when she said that they need a curriculum to match the children, I think I heard that in the main session. Did I hear that?
Probably.
So that is so perplexing to me, and it shows you how white supremacy is dominant in our culture, even in Black spaces, right? Because most kids in the DC public schools historically, and now it's changing, have been African American. So the school curriculum has been centering whiteness. Like that doesn't make sense to me. So it just shows you the prevalence of white supremacy and how we got to have people that's willing to disrupt that. Because I would have never thought in DC kids reading, you know, in a literature class they're reading To Kill a Mockingbird as the truth. Like they doing what other kids doing in other places, right? That doesn't make sense to me. But I heard that that's baffling. But I guess, but I'm guessing that most of the teachers, and I have no clue, I have no numbers to back this up, if most of the teachers are white, or even Black, I take that back. It doesn't matter. If all of us have been through a white supremacy system that has been having an agenda, and the agenda is to make whiteness superior. So I guess DC is not having been, they're not shielded from that. Nobody in the world is shielded from it, which is showing you how much we got to get on the ground and disrupt. Because if you got all Black kids thinking that Shakespeare is the king and they don't know James Baldwin, that's an issue.
Definitely.
Right? Are they, you know, so that's baffling. We got work to do, guys.
We definitely do. And yeah, I think that's one of the many reasons why we're so adamant about having a district-wide grow your own program. We really want to make it that our students, our local community members who have invested so much time and energy into the educating of DC students also have the opportunity to really advance in the field and the career, but also ensuring that they have a more accurate perspective and training in order to do that work, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I just brought back this chart so that we can go back to that point about representation. There's just so much, so many disparities. And like I said, they're just so much greater in schools. Like you think, okay, 96% Black population of students and 68% teacher population, like that seems pretty, not so bad. But then when you look at some schools, the disparities might be even bigger than they are, district or ward wide. So it's just important to keep in mind.
Oh, and I noticed on Luz's slide that she put, thinking about students like internationally. What was it? Have we thought about expanding the program to international students and things like that? And we've talked before about even just getting to retain teachers who are here on teaching visas and helping with that. And that's a big part of the representation for Latinx students, which is in some words, even bigger, that gap. And so I was wondering whether we thought about that kind of like dual language teaching programs and kind of, making sure that that is a highlight of the program too.
So I think, so our Latinx campaign is definitely focused on, we have so many teachers like Luz who are such a valuable asset in our schools, but who face so many barriers in order to just becoming licensed or getting their visa sponsored. So that in and of itself is like kind of a separate campaign that we're still pushing. But in terms of this grow your own pipeline, I think what's really cool about it is when you have like for example, I taught at HD Cook and we had such a high population of immigrant students. And those kids are going to grow up, like in DC. They're going to be essentially, born and bred, or not born, but bred in DC. And so maybe they hadn't thought about, teaching as a profession, but as high school students, if they see it as an opportunity, it's our goal that we can have more immigrant students who are like being raised in DC then come back and be teachers to our next generation of immigrant students. And that's kind of like the beauty of a teacher pipeline, is that we're breeding from the community, and it's more likely to be, auto-sustaining in that way. But we also know that we have like this other avenue from our immigrant teachers, and we definitely are working to make that more sustainable as well. But that kind of nicely takes us to our commitments, because we have many opportunities for everyone here to plug into our campaign. So I'm going to share again. And thank you for your slides and your conversation. So I'm going to leave this slide up for a moment just so you can take a look. There are a few upcoming opportunities, including the first one will be testimony at the State Board of Education. We'd love to hear other voices than just me and Giselle pushing for this. So you can sign up by emailing sboe@dc.gov. There's also testimony at the DC Council budget oversight hearings, where we can ask for DCPS for recruitment and retention money to be targeted at recruiting, supporting, and retaining educators of color. So using that budget to retain educators instead of just recruit. I'll drop these links in the chat if you want to bookmark them. We also know that so many kids want to maybe be teachers, or maybe just want to talk about how important it would be to have a grow your own program in the district. So if you have any students that you think might want to submit a video, they can do it with that link. We also have the Empower a Diverse Teacher Court. So if you'd like to help us on this campaign and continue to develop it and have these conversations with potential partners, you can sign up there and we'll reach out. And finally, if there's any policymakers, anyone you can advocate to, we could use more voices. So what can you commit to? And I'll drop these in the chat so you can bookmark them.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kelvin Brown. I've been watching and listening. I'm in the background and doing a little multitasking here, but I heard a lot of great ideas, and I wanted to also share and add to the conversation some of the things that, as a former teacher and now commissioner over in Ward 7, and having worked in and around education for a number of years, one of the things that I see as an opportunity for the district is that we know that there is a lack of workforce development opportunities at the high school level. So if a kid wants to be a plumber, wants to go and be an electrician, wants to be any other field, but my suggestion would be to add teacher to that field and add that career, and maybe have students that are interested in education shadow a teacher and for extra credit or work similar to what they would do if they wanted to do another type of workforce development opportunity.
Thanks, Kelvin. Yes, it's definitely part of the plan. I like the idea of shadowing a teacher. I think our breakout rooms are closing in a few seconds. So if you'd like to continue the conversation, feel free to reach out. And thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for participating.
Thank you, guys. This was great.
Yeah, thank you both.
It was good, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Hope you had a great first session. We're just going to take a few minutes to reset our breakout rooms and allow you to re-choose in just a few minutes.
I have to leave, but this is a wonderful little program you have going on here. I enjoyed myself.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. What I'm going to do now is also drop into the chat in case anybody wants to look at what they signed up for ahead of time. You can just look for your name there and see what you signed up for this